Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Louie Butko and thank you for joining us, however you found us here on CHCH Podcasts. On today's show, we're taking a little trip down memory lane to a show you may have seen during its original run here on CHCH. Homicide, Life on the Street aired on NBC from 1993 through 1999. The show was brought to the screen by filmmaker Barry Levinson, and it was all based on the book by then Baltimore newspaper reporter David Simon. Now, cop shows have been a staple of television since the very first Code Raid tube powered up the first TV. This time, the creators wanted something different, so they had a creative mandate. No guns, no car chases. They also wanted to make the show look very different. And our guests today were part of the roller coaster ride that was Homicide, Life on the Street. First, Kyle Secor. Kyle was an original cast member, and he played Tim Bayless on the show, a new member of the Homicide team, finding his way just like the audiences were. And Reed Diamond joined the show in season 4 as the hotshot arson investigator Mike Kellerman. The pair now co-host the Rewatch podcast, Homicide, Life on Repeat, and I'm thrilled to have them join us on CHCH Newsmakers. Gentlemen, great to have you on here today. Thank you so much for making the time.
Man, good day, eh? It's fantastic, Louie.
You know the audience. You know the audience.
Wow.
A little Canada for us. Hey there, Reed. Something that was a bit of a surprise to me. You guys didn't really talk. You guys hadn't been like really good friends from the end of the show in 1999 to getting this podcast off the ground. So tell us a little bit what went on there. What's wrong? What took this so long?
It was a deep sense of bitterness and resentment on my part, and I'm apologizing to you right now. It's been a long time.
Thank you, and thank you, Canada, for providing this opportunity for us to connect in this way.
And to release this thing. Reed and I had seen each other over the years periodically. We had run into each other in LA, actually, at a yoga class and shopping. And I remember when Reed had their daughter, and I had seen him like maybe 3 months after that. And so it had been a while, and truly we had not connected for. Reed, how many years did we count up? How long had it been? 13 years?
It's been at least 13 years. I mean, that's one of the special things about this show, and the reason we're doing this podcast, not only because it was such a groundbreaking show artistically and sort of changed TV as we know it, but it was also a very intense experience for everyone involved. There were some very big personalities, and everyone took away, what did you call it? The traumedy from that experience.
Yeah, it was a traumedy.
So it was very rough when we were there, and there was a lot of chaos and a lot of dissent fomented. But over the years, when we'd run into each other, it was always incredibly sweet. So anytime Kyle and I would run into each other at yoga or outside of Trader Joe's, it was always very lovely and we were happy to see each other. And then the time was right. It's 30 years really since the show started, and now it's airing on Peacock in the United States. And I think you guys have it on Crave. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that. And it was the time to sort of revisit it and have a shared catharsis. And surprisingly, that's what this show's been turned out to be, because everyone who's come on, from the big producers, writers, directors, everyone had a very incredible experience creatively, but also semi-traumatic or a traumedy experience, and they thought they were the only ones. So it's been nice to go, no, we're all in this together.
We're all in the same boat.
Well, yes. And we'll get into that, because you guys don't hide that. You don't try to sugarcoat anything about what the show was like. You get into some of the tensions that rose, but the one thing about the podcast that it comes off easily, and it came off in the research of the episodes of the show I was doing, the natural chemistry that you two guys seem to have together, especially rejoining the show when you did 4 seasons in. Where did that chemistry come from, and was it always that way? Did you guys run into some of those dramedy situations amongst each other, Reed?
Well, I'll start from the present and work backwards. Okay. Right now, this is a love affair. You're looking at my work wife. I text Kyle. Kyle and I text each other more than we text our own spouses. And I know if my phone pings, it's either my wife, Marnie, who's in Toronto right now. Hey, shout out to the Big Smoke. And or it's my work wife, the beautiful, the sexy, the delicious and nutritious Kyle Secor.
Oh, God, you always get me on that stuff.
Oh, come on. You know how delicious you know what you are? You're a little Christmas candy right now, buddy.
Yeah.
I just want to unwrap you. I know I don't want to have to wait until the 25th. But back in the day, as we joke about on the show, it was a crazy environment. And when I first got there in season 4, I always describe it as no one was excited to see me. No one was happy that I was there. I was brought on to be, which I just realized only in the last year or so, that, oh my gosh, I was brought on to be the hunk. But that wasn't really what my intention was. I had wanted to be on this show from the time I watched the pilot. I watched the pilot when it aired in January of 1993, and I said, I have to be on that show because I was so interested, I was so desirous of playing a cop on TV. I almost became a cop in real life. And so when the audition came for Homicide: Life on the Street, I thought, well, if they want a guy who looks like me, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy, because at the time the description was, I believe, a Johnny Depp type, and I'm not quite a Johnny Depp type. But I got there, and it took a little while for everyone to warm up, but here we are 30 years later, and you're witnessing an incredible love affair between two men.
Yeah, Kyle, I mean, we're looking at
my
some...
take. Oh.
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, Kyle, we're looking at some of the pictures. I believe we have one, basically one of your first scenes, I guess, together here, if I edited this correctly, if I remember what I edited. But yeah, to come in 4 seasons in, there we go. There's that fire episode 1, season 4. For you, Kyle, what was that like, having this network note, it felt like, telling you to sex up the show maybe a little bit?
Well, if you went back, if we went back to that first photo that you just showed of us all looking at Reed, that was sort of the feeling on the set. It was a lot of what's he doing here, and in a general sense of animosity. But I don't even know if we knew on the first day. Like look at that! Look at the way that I'm looking at him. Look at the way I'm looking at him. It's his hair. It's the whole thing.
It's the confidence he walked in with, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like going, God damn him. But
it's the hair. It's the hair.
It's the hair.
I had some of the worst hair of the 90s. Yes, I had them all. If there was a bad hair look, I was the proud owner of that look.
You had the flyaway was the best.
It was great.
The flop. But I think, I just remember thinking, what is he doing there? Is he going to be taking away some of the scenes? Is he going to be doing this, that, the other? But he ended up being like a really great presence on the set and really snapped up the set. I mean, he added to the humor of the whole thing. And the second, I think that one photo, Reed, was from the first season, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Well, there's the fire one where we first meet. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And in the second season, for some odd reason, Reed was the guy that I went to. The second season, that season I'd gotten sober, and he was the first guy I went to and told him that I was sober for some reason, which is, it's also like, here we are doing this podcast together after all these years. So, I mean, he got brought in for many more reasons than just a pretty face, which... Yeah, he was okay looking. Like
Detective Frank Pembleton coming to tell you that his wife is pregnant in that season 4, episode 1. I watched. I did my homework, guys. I did my homework.
You really did.
You talked about it being something you'd never seen before, and it just being revolutionary. It really did break all the rules. It created a distinct shooting style. How did you react to that with the camera kind of always in your face? It sort of felt like it was another character. What was that shooting style like for you as an actor?
It was incredibly exciting because I was more comfortable that time on the stage, and I'd come from the theater, and sort of to have my sort of crucible in film be this production was the best way to start. The other exciting part about it is you never knew when you were going to be on camera. If you're shooting a show in the old school traditional way, which everything was, where you have a wide shot and then you do some overs and some close-ups, very often, a less than committed actor can sort of fall asleep on your close-up or not commit 100%. But because no one knew at any point when they were going to be on camera, it created this energy because the scene was always going on. It allowed, first of all, it allowed for any sort of accident to make it into the show. And I always think like the accident is the magic. The mistake is the magic. But it was incredibly dynamic and exciting. And Jean, when I got there, Jean de Gasson, I'm sorry, Kyle, say it for me.
Desagonzac. Oh, damn it, that was wrong too.
I did my Juilliard warm-ups. Red leather, yellow leather, good blood, bad blood. Jean de Gasson.
There we go.
Thank you, darling. I'm working on it. And that is it's also for our francophone viewers and listeners here on Chum. De Segonzac, le réalisateur de photographie. I don't know if that's right. I don't know. I'm just making it up. But he was the man. So he was another character in it, and it was incredibly exciting. And that I feel comes through the screen. Don't you agree, Kyle?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And Jean was he was a dancer. Like he was like that was I remember Nick Gomez told us about that, going to see ballet performances and things like that. And Jean prided himself on the way he used his body, and he just became another character in the scene. He wasn't an outside camera looking in, although he was, but he was truly another character that we had to make space for. We had to move. We had to adjust around him, and it was really exciting. And another great thing is that Reed had been watching the show for 3 years and wanting to come. So he got the great thing of being able to come on the show already knowing what we were doing out there. And he blended in like pretty effortlessly, I would say. There was no hiccup at all.
It was just incredible to watch, and I think there was a scene in the episodes I was watching where he's literally like running towards you, and you're all going to this one spot, and it feels like there's an abrupt like stop, and you feel it, and you feel it in the way it's set, and just even the Baltimore obviously became this big city for TV shows. The Wire, of course, David Simon that we're all familiar with, and a lot of credit to what you guys were able to do with Homicide for a continuation of The Wire. But just Baltimore as a city, Kyle, what was that like to either be to experience it, to be a part of that city, whether or not it was shot there? I don't know. But what was it like for you to really make Baltimore home?
Oh, I mean, it was definitely the city we shot in. We didn't. That's all we shot in. I mean, we took a little trip up to New York and down to Miami for some interesting reason. But Baltimore was it, and so we shot in all of the very edge. I mean, places in town that you just wouldn't go to on a vacation. We were there, and so moving there and kind of picking up your life as a young actor and going there, and Baltimore just seemed like this place that you couldn't get to easily, and there we were, and it was another character. So when you started your scene, you already had support because there was Baltimore. It was another character in the scene, just like Jean or any of the other actors.
I think also what's exciting about Baltimore too which is what we always try to do each week on this show, on our podcast, Homicide, Life on Repeat, is put the show into its historical context. So in 1993, there were no network television shows. This was a network television show back when in the States we had 3 major networks. I guess you guys were probably still in black and white. I can't remember what was going on in 1993. We had 3.5 major networks, and so this was a radical departure. You'd seen things of this ilk on film, in a Scorsese film or something of the great films of the 70s, but to do this on television, on location, no shows were shot on location, and we didn't build any sets. In fact, the only sort of permanent space we had, the squad room, was a functioning building. We didn't have any removable walls like you would on a set. It was a building, and everything else, if we were in a crack house, we were in a crack house. We were on the street, we were on the street. If we were on a bar, we were in a bar. So for the verisimilitude, for the reality of that show, Baltimore was essential. Baltimore also is like no other city in the world, except for the Hamilton. I mean, Hamilton obviously has got its own very distinct personality, but there's nowhere like Baltimore. And then because the other part of our show and our story that we like to tell is some of the bad behavior, because the show was shot in Baltimore, no network executives from NBC were going to fly out from Burbank to come surprise the set. So perhaps if you had an actor who wasn't showing up to work that week because perhaps they had a tipple too many, as long as the episode episode was turned in on time, under budget, no one in Burbank was the wiser.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about the cast itself is just, fantastic. And, with an ensemble like that, where, maybe you aren't the lead detective, I go back to the episodes I watched. It's Munch kind of writing the sergeant's exam or something like that. He's not getting a lot of screen time. There'd be episodes like that. But how was that like working in such a large group of people on a show like this? Naturally, I believe tensions are going to fly. No, Kyle?
Oh yeah, I mean it was incredibly challenging because every single actor on that show had a huge ego and a fragile ego. So it was a combination that was just ripe for a lot of pain. And a lot of creative tension and a lot of joy and the work that came out of that particular soup was, I find, just amazing. And it came out of it exactly because of what was happening with everyone. It didn't come out in spite of it. It came out. That's what came out, because before the camera could roll, you could have people like having another actor up against the wall and shaking them, or whatever it is, and almost coming to blows, and then the camera goes on, and out comes this incredible stuff. So it was challenging, but I wouldn't change a single instant of what happened.
And Reed, as we mentioned, you guys don't shy away with that on the podcast, right? You don't worry about what those people in Burbank, California are thinking, 30 years after the fact, but it is part of the story of what made the show what it was.
And that's what's exciting, and that's the reason we wanted to do this. Certainly why I wanted to do this. Our motto, we have a few mottos, but one of our main mottos is don't bore us, get to the chorus. And so there's all these rich stories, and I feel 30 years is just enough time for the statute of limitations to run out on some of the crimes that were committed, and for the sting. Now the stories that could have been a little more tough back in the day now are more funny. I mean, because I know as a collector of stories, and I was a collector of Homicide stories, being a fan of the show, as soon as I got there, I just wanted to know all the stories. I was like, please tell me. So I'd ask whoever it was. I'd ask the props department or people in the office, like, tell me, the craziest story. So I was just collecting them. But I also, as an actor, that's one of the things I love about our nutty business is hearing stories on the set of some Frankenheimer or Peckinpah film back in the 60s and all that bad behavior, Frank Sinatra tearing up a dressing room or whatever the heck it's going to be. Those are the colorful, fun stories that with a little distance are just hilarious. So, yeah, we don't shy away because there's no other point. We are a rewatch podcast in that we sort of frame it around rewatching an episode. But early on, we got some advice from fans of the show, and they said, just don't get into the granular details. Tell the stories that only you can tell. And so we try to take all of our neuro enhancers and remember as much as we can, and then we bring people on. And what's fun, too, is Kyle and I were just talking about this morning, is it's so interesting that everyone has a slightly different take on the apocryphal or possibly the true stories. So it's nice, the Rashomon of it, what's one person's memory, and we sort of piece this puzzle together, and it's a hilarious and magical puzzle.
Was it cast? Was it always the cast going at each other? Was it cast and crew, cast and writers? I mean, give us an example. I know you want to save the good stuff for your podcast, which is fine. Give me one story between a cast and maybe a writer or a crew member that I'm sure there's millions, eh?
I don't think anyone got away with anything. I mean, Reed has many stories about wrestling on the floor with writers at in bars and things like that, and there was guns pulled and knives pulled, and I mean, Reed, do you want to tell a story? Do you want me to do the knife around the?
You got to tell the knife story first. You always got to lead with the knife story.
always.
Okay, so this I'll make this quick. So we, the actors, we feel that we had taken over
This is before I got there.
Had taken over the production, and that they had to move at our pace and with what we said. And the writers and producers were giving us in no uncertain terms that was not true. And we thought that the writers shouldn't show up on the set to guard their words. And they sent a couple of writers to guard their words on the set, and we struck, and we said we weren't going to work. And that weekend they called a meeting, the producers did, and said, we're going to meet at this, upstairs at this restaurant. Was it the Waterfront? I think so. And we were sitting around this table, and there was Jimmy Finity, who you will hear many, many stories of. He's quite a character. And he basically said, you will come back to work, and we'll do whatever we want to do. And I remember Ned Beatty got up and was just going to slice his throat. And Jim Finity didn't bat an eyelid at that, and Ned was going off his rocker about that. And the guy who you didn't think would stand up and be the peacemaker did, and it was Mr. Yaphet Kotto, who was sitting next to me while I'm looking at Ned holding a knife in his hand, threatening Jimmy. And Yaphet said, listen, guys, can't we do something? Can't we do this a little bit better? Can't we all love each other? And so we said, yes, okay, we'll do this, and this. And then on Monday, the writers showed up on set because they made them into producers.
Wow.
That's my story, and I'll stick with it. And so it was a little bit of craziness like that. I'm sure Reed has one that he might want to share. Reed.
I love that.
I mean, the beauty of this show was, as we said, we were in Baltimore, and it was the battle days. And by the time I got there, there was a lot less gunplay, even though there was an actor who will remain nameless who came up to me one day as we're heading to our trailers for lunch and opened his coat, and he had a gun in his coat. And he said he was going to kill one of the producers. And I thought, all right, I guess you are. And he didn't end up killing the producer. He ended up shooting at someone who was bullying him in his neighborhood. But that's where we were at. And also, you have to remember, too, now, this was a network television show, as I said earlier. Nowadays, when you're making golden age television shows for HBO or for Crave or whoever you're making them for, you're making 10 episodes a season. We did 22 episodes a season. We were there for 9 months, and we were in this very sort of incestuous, not necessarily incestuous in that sense, but we were all together. So we had this. I remember my first season there, it was sort of the same triangle that I would walk every day. I lived about 2 blocks from the studio, or where the squad room was. So I'd walk to work, I'd shoot my scenes. We'd all go right across the street to the bar where we just had the reunion last month, and we'd drink all night. And if we wanted to keep drinking, they'd just cover up the windows of the bar, and we'd just keep drinking until everyone was ready to go home. You get a few hours of sleep, and you come back and start all over again. And yes, oftentimes it was great to go back for this reunion and point to the part of the floor where I'm talking to the executive producer of the show, Tom Fontana. I go, remember, that's where we'd be wrestling in spilled beer at 4 o'clock in the morning, because it always devolved into some sort of horrible wrestling match. But so it was just, we were all together, and it was the same group. I mean, eventually my second season, I took some advice from Andre, because Andre was very smart. He had his family there, and he'd moved away from downtown Fells Point, from where we were shooting the show. And so I moved out into the country, and I think Kyle moved out into the country too.
Same
so
neighborhood,
there was exactly. So that you weren't tempted to go to the bar every night.
That's awesome. You mentioned Andre, you mentioned Yaphet, Richard. I mean, there's a lot of guys I'm sure would have had great stories on the podcast. But the thing about your podcast, you bring back all these guests, and you have such a plethora, whether it was one episode kind of appearance, whether it was a storyline appearance. So for you guys to be reliving this through the podcast, what has that been like? And is it a reflective thing? Is it therapeutic? How do you find kind of reliving these episodes now, knowing what you know and living how you've lived? Kyle?
It's been a journey.
And that's why we started this really in the first place, is we had really unanswered questions about why it had such a huge effect on us even all these years later. And for me, it was also that after Andre passed away, I remember thinking, gosh, I just love the guy so much, and I couldn't remember why. I couldn't remember a lot of memories about him, and I thought, oh, I've put all of that stuff away. Why did I do that? And so the podcast was sort of an extension of how to go back into the whys of all of that, and Reed has been just it's been such an amazing relationship because he is a font of memories, and he's able to bring back a lot of things that were useful in digging through those memories. And doing this and then going back to Baltimore for the reunion was a huge piece of the puzzle, which seemed to, in a way, after the reunion, the puzzle came together pretty. I see. And I feel like right now it's so much easier to talk about all this stuff. It's so much easier to talk about the bad behavior. It's so much easier because it's all water under the bridge. Yeah,
Reed, I guess same idea, to be able even to get to watch an episode where you had a great connection with Andre or Yaphet or something like that, or Richard Belzer. Like, what is it therapeutic almost to a point now that they've, especially recently, they've all kind of moved on?
It's been beyond therapeutic, and it's been joyful, and it's changed. The reason that Kyle and I started this in July, the reason we do it now is very different because things have evolved. We've evolved. Our relationship has evolved. The sort of the wounds or the trauma from the show, that's all gone. And so it changes with each episode, and that's what's been most exciting for me. As I said, the Rewatch podcast, I wasn't sure if that was sort of the genre, the milieu that I was interested in. I didn't know if I wanted to talk about each beat of each show, and it's turned into something so much more. It's a conversation about creativity and memory and life, and what's been such a gift is people have been so excited to come on the show and tell their stories. It was funny because our first interview was with Paul Attanasio, who is credited with being the creator of the show. He wrote the first episode, and he's a fascinating, brilliant guy. And the night before, Kyle and I are still sort of young, eager podcasters. We're just beginning our show, and we get together for our sort of meeting the night before, and we were like, "Are we going to ask questions?" And then we sort of decided, no, this is a conversation. Let's see where it goes. Let's not sort of try to control it. And my gosh, Paul opened his mouth and just the stories came out. And that's how it's been since. Every guest is so eager to get their memories and their stories and to have their own personal catharsis from this, that it's just, you really don't have to do much but sit back and laugh and enjoy. So it's been joyous and it's been healing, and they always have the same themes. As I said, what's so interesting is no matter who they were, they think they were the only one who had a chaotic or traumatic experience. And then our favorite part now is to say, no, that's, we all felt the same way. They're like, you did? Oh, yeah. And everyone to a person wishes, oh my gosh, I wish I could have gone back and done that differently. And what we realized, the moral of the story at the end is, no, that's your journey. That's the journey you were on. And if you didn't have this incredibly powerful experience, you wouldn't be who you are today. But it's been so fun, and we've been so honored that people are so eager to talk to us and really just bring the stories. And that's what I know that's what I came here for, and I think that's what Kyle wanted, and I think that's what the audience wants, is you're getting stories that have never been told before. I mean, we're learning things every week. And we just finished recording an episode that's going to air in a few days with Daniel Baldwin. And we were debating this morning, like, how many of these stories are within the statute of limitations and are we legally allowed? I had to consult my lawyer this morning.
Oh, man. Well, listen, your show is still bringing people together. If you indulge me for just a second, I told my dad that I was talking to two of the stars from Homicide: Life on the Street. My dad knows what I do. I've never seen him get more excited. He went into we were at the cottage. He went into his bedroom at the cottage and pulled out 6 seasons of Homicide: Life on the Street on DVD. Told me to do my homework. So if he's watching this, whenever he's watching this, I hope he does, making him proud. So you're still bringing people together with Homicide: Life on the Street. So
great.
thank you, gentlemen.
What's your dad's name?
Give Jim Butko a shout out if you don't mind there.
Jim Butko, you rock. Thank you for turning your son on to Homicide finally after all these years.
Well, you don't want to know how old I was when it came out, so I won't tell you that. So I'll let you guys sit on it. Gentlemen, thank you so much. The show, it's called Welcome to Homicide: Life on Repeat. Kyle Secor, Reed Diamond, thank you so much, gentlemen. Really do appreciate the time today.
Oh my God. Thanks, you guys. Louie, this was a pleasure. All
This
right,
is
buddy.
great fun.
Thank you. That is the highest praise I can get from you guys. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. My thanks to Kyle Secor and Reed Diamond for making the time. Two great guys. Check out their podcast, Homicide, Life on Repeat. And if you're like me and you want to rewatch it, but you don't have it on DVD, well, it is available on Crave if you're watching this in Canada. It's available on Peacock if you're watching this in the U.S. All right. I want to thank you for joining us today. Once again, thanks to Kyle. Thanks to Reed. Thanks to Don Janescu for producing today's episode. And thank you to Mike Corsten for directing. And hey, while you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to CHCH Podcasts so you never miss an episode of this show or any of the other great shows. And while you're liking podcasts, one more time, Homicide, Life on Repeat. Check it out. All right, from all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko. Have a fantastic day.